Well, I'm still waiting for parts to come in for that cylinder head. It's Tuesday evening right now. I was kind of hoping they'd come by Friday last week or Monday at the latest. But anyway, I have plenty of other stuff I can do right now, so I decided it was time to get that crankshaft apart and just remove any sludge that's in the center here. I like to keep my nuts and bolts together, mostly because they pop mark the end of those let me see if I can get this off of here. Anyway, take my word for it, they center punch the end of those bolts to keep them, you know, nice and tight on the nuts after they're torqued in. So I like to make sure that the nuts go back with the same bolts where they came from. I've got one more left to come out. That's this one here. And then I'll be able to get the two halves of the crank off the flywheel. But before you do that, if you're ever doing this, it's a really good idea to mark your flywheel. Like I've got one little center punch mark there, and one here, two here, and two over there. So that I know when I put that back together which way it came from. Your longer nuts go here, your shorter nuts go here, here, and in the other two positions. The other two positions actually have a lock piece that goes on underneath them, so they don't need to be center punched, but the other ones should be. And well, being as this is 2023, we got something even better than punch marks right now. We get Loctite, the red stuff especially. Anyway, let me get this apart and we'll see what we find in the middle. Now, I don't know if the camera will pick that up. Yeah, I think it is, but as you can see, there's a big, what it looks like about a 7/16 alignment pin that goes through that crankshaft right there. And anyway, that helps to align the crank, even though these bolts are an interference fit, so that that's going to make sure the crank is all aligned when it goes back together. But anyways, I'm going to get the pry bar now, put it in between the crank faces, and see if I can get that apart. Okay, there they are. I didn't wipe them off or anything. I wanted you to see exactly what I saw when I got these off of here. Now, on the upper part here of that bore is where you're going to find anything in terms of sludge that may have collected in there. There's very, very little in this crankshaft here. Some, but not too much at all. It's really quite clean. Now, the hole in the middle of the flywheel being larger than the hole in the middle of the crank, the sludge is going to pull out by centrifugal force out along this edge here and wind up going into the center part of the crank. And you can see there's a little tiny bit right there up along that section, and there's a little tiny bit right there along that section. Now that would mean that most of the accumulation you're going to find in here, if I can get this camera to focus, there we go, is right here on the top. And you can see, well, down here, that's just goopy oil and stuff that's laying down in there. And a little bit of sludge maybe, but the stuff that's stuck up here on the high part, this is where most of the junk will accumulate. So we'll scrape that out of there. There it is. It's dry. It's you know, it's nasty. That's basically, it's carbon, and it's wear materials from the engine. I would not be surprised if it was magnetic. Tell you what, let's find out. Alright, I've got one of my handy little magnets that I picked up at the show in Rhinebeck years ago, and yeah, it sticks to the magnet. So there is some iron in that. So it's just wear material basically from the engine. And of course, you know, it's the carbon, whatever, that separates from the oil as the engine's turning. So anyway, this one was so clean that honestly, it really didn't need to be done. But you don't know what you've got until you take it apart and clean it. So I'm glad, my mind will be satisfied now that this crank is as clean as I can make it before I put it back together. And you know, I'll be able to say that, you know what, this engine's completely rebuilt right from the crankshaft up, so I'll know what I've got. Now it's time to get these over in the old parts washer in the Varsol and clean them up. There now. It's all put back together. It's all nice and clean, especially on the inside. That's why I took it apart to begin with. Remember that the nuts go on the timing side, and that these two bottom nuts are actually going on the ends of studs, so you're going to have nuts on both sides in this particular one. What else was I going to suggest? Oh, make sure again that you tighten these down to the specified torques. The book I have says 35 foot-pounds, and you do not want that crankshaft coming apart when the engine's running. So torque it down like it's supposed to. Again, I've put red Loctite on these bolts, and I've reused the old bolts. A lot of people say don't do that, but frankly, some of the stuff you're getting nowadays for replacements are worse than used parts. So you know, these ones were in nice shape. You know, the threads are good on them. They don't look like they were pulled when I took them off. They broke clear at 30 foot-pounds of torque. So I know they weren't over torqued or stretched or anything. So anyway, I'm going to lube this up, especially on the inside. Make sure I get some oil on there. But before I do that, I think I'm going to repair this little area on the crankshaft that I had mentioned before. I'm going to build that up with a bit of bronze, and then I'll machine it down the lathe to get that this section here the same diameter as that, and make sure that it's actually true, so that when the alternator rotor's on there, it's not going to be loose or misaligned or anything like that, because you don't want a misaligned rotor, because then it bangs into the stator and it ruins the stator, and it costs a whole lot of money to replace that. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, that's it for the crank. She's all nice and repaired. I've fixed up that keyway that was banged out from the rotor rattling around in there. Key's a nice tight fit in there now, and I've built up the end of that crankshaft there, as you can see, with welds, or bronze weld I should say, so that that'll take up the space that was worn from the rotor rattling around on there. So anyway, I'm going to oil up the crank so it doesn't rust, because it's all dried out now from the Varsol tank. So yeah, I'll oil it inside and out, put it in a plastic bag, and put it away until I'm ready to put it in the engine.